The husband may be doing things that the wife doesn't know. The wife may be doing things that the husband doesn't know, but the apps know. They may be sending emails and receiving emails, but what about the calendars? Their daily plans, activities, flights, restaurants, reservations.
Even if I log in anywhere, like Facebook as well, that's mail.
All of that information accumulated over years, most of which people themselves have forgotten. 5 years back, what restaurant reservation did I make? Or what email notification did I get from the library, or whatever it may be? Platform and its algorithms, they remember. Lopez v. Apple.
Okay.
Someone actually brought a case in the US against Apple, saying that Siri is recording our private personal conversations.
Max Schrems was a person who actually asked Facebook, right?
Yes.
That what kind of data they actually collect. Facebook gave them a CD which had 40,000 pages of just his data.
Yeah.
And that includes the dated data. So शुरू करते हैं. And data क्या होता है? What is data for an average person?
Mm-hmm.
What is data? Is it his name? Is it something else? And what is this distinction between generic data and personal data?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thanks, Rudra. So I would say data is basically information, right? That's the simplest way to understand it. So information about the weather, information about traffic, information about n number of things. What's relevant, I think, in the digital rights conversation is personal data. So that is, I think, a simple way of thinking about it is personal information. So when you see people talking about data rights, data usage, the personal data law that the government has recently brought in, what they're basically talking about is personal information. So that is information about you, Rudra, exactly the things you were mentioning, like your name, address, email ID, phone number, or any other information that can be used to identify you. That is personal data or personal information, and that is the type of data that is controversial when it comes to regulation, data protection regulation. And that has been at the heart of global conversations about data protection.
But sir, why is it controversial in the first place? I get it that it's used to profile us or, identify us. That's the information that is personal.
Yeah.
How can it be misused per se?
So, the controversy and the source of the misuse basically has to do with data collection or personal data collection or personal information collection. So that means that there are entities, governmental, non-governmental, public, private, which are collecting information about you, which can be used to identify you. That's why personal information, like the examples that we gave. And then you may say, okay, well, what's so bad about that? And actually, in a way, there isn't very much that's bad about that, especially if they are responsible actors and using the data in a reasonable way, etc. The problem comes when either these companies, platforms, entities, governments are irresponsible in how they handle your data. They are negligent in how they handle your data. They do not apply and use the proper security standards, etc. And then your data falls in quote unquote the wrong hands. And that's when you have problems of identity theft, fraud, and so on and so forth, right? Because what if tomorrow in a different state someone uses, say, some personal identifier about you and uses that to purchase something, right? That's an example of data falling into the wrong hands. So that's one source of the problem. So which is that fortunately or unfortunately, the world we're living in today is governed quite heavily by data use by personal information use?
So follow-up question. I mean, this is the Swami judgment. It's a right to privacy. In this judgment, right to privacy was established. So follow-up question is that government also collects our personal data.
Yeah.
Aadhaar card. So why I'm mentioning this is because I searched my mail on a website where I could see that my data has been leaked or not.
Yeah.
Now, in this particular case, my data, my mail, my name, my address, my parents' name was leaked in a major data leak concerning the Aadhaar scam, like the Aadhaar data leak.
Yeah.
I think 1 billion contacts or mails or whatever personal identifying information was actually leaked. Now, it is already leaked.
Yeah.
What now? I mean, I can't change my name.
Yeah.
I can't change my contact number. Obviously, it's a very big task.
Yeah.
I can't change my parents.
Yeah.
But now it has already been leaked. So
Yeah.
what's my recourse? And who's to blame? Now my follow-up question is that the government lacks the proper infrastructure to process and store this data.
Yeah.
Government owned is what I'm talking about, because even the United States, like the CIA, also hires Amazon to store their confidential data.
Yeah.
So now who to blame? So like these two questions.
So, let's unpack that.
Yes.
Because there's a lot to delve into here. I'll start actually, Rudra, by just finishing up my response to the earlier question. So, one is, of course, when entities collect our personal information, our personal data, they may themselves be negligent in how they use it, and that's where the data leaks that you're talking about happen, right? So government collects our data, they're negligent in how they store it, process it, it gets leaked. Companies collect our data, they're negligent, it gets leaked. The other concern with data is not in terms of the companies and the governments losing our data or our data being leaked because of their negligent practices, etc., but because of, and this is more to do with the private sector, with companies rather than government, is then they use that data to turn around and target us with ads, right? So that's where the term targeted advertising comes from, or behavioral advertising comes from. So basically what that means is, say, in any average given day, like today, how many ads online did you see on your phone or your laptop as you were going about your daily business, right? Those ads that you saw were there because your personal data was at some point by some entities collected and then maybe sold to advertisers or data brokers. And then in return, what comes back at you is these kind of targeted advertisements, or we're now quite familiar with the concept of a feed, right? Whenever we go onto any platform, we see a feed, or in general, any app or whatever that you use. What's the interface? What kind of content are you seeing? How is it being organized, arranged, displayed? What may be shown to you may be very different from what is being shown to me.
Yes.
That again is because of the collection and processing of our personal data. Now, again, you may say, but what's so bad about that? One point that critics have identified is that it shapes this kind of use of our personal data, shapes and influences our behavior, and maybe even shapes and influences our perception of reality or what's happening in the world, etc., etc.
I would like to add to that, because my screen time is like 6 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm on Instagram on my feed all the time.
Yeah.
Like understanding and seeing that an algorithms controls or maybe influence to a certain extent.
Yeah.
My choices, my perception of reality. So yeah.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah. So you may have heard of the term echo chamber.
Echo
right?
chamber. Yes. So what does echo chamber mean?
So this is again a consequence of collection of our personal data. Because platforms want us to spend as much time, on their apps. Why? Because the more time we spend, the more data, coming back to the original question, or more personal information about us that they can collect, the more that they can sell, the more revenue they can generate.
Through advertisement,
through ads,
Yeah.
right? But then how are they going to get us to spend more time? So how is the same platform, Rudra,
Yes, sir.
going to get you to spend, you said 6 hours a day,
Yeah.
and the same platform wants me to spend 6 hours a day too, right? Because if you spend 6 hours a day, chances that you'll click on an ad are higher, and chances that you will make a purchase are higher. And then when you make a purchase, the platform indirectly benefits. But they don't want just you to make a purchase. They want me to make a purchase as well. But Rudra, you are, as you were telling me before, currently a college student.
Yes.
I was in college many years ago. I don't want to specify how many, but long time ago. So our interests, our passions are very different, right? What may attract us to spend more time on a particular platform is very different.
Yes.
You know, you may be interested in, I don't know, say sports, for example.
Yeah.
Right? I may be interested in
Chess.
mystery novels or chess or whatever it
Yeah.
is. So how does the same platform get to know that, okay, the way to make Rudra spend 6 hours is to show him more sports content, and the way to get Sachin to spend 6 hours is to show him chess content or mystery novel content. That again is through collection of our personal data and information. And then finally, I would say, Rudra, that again one may counter that by saying, what's so bad about that?
Yeah.
And then what I would say to that is that, again, a concern that has been identified by experts over the years is that when you, Rudra, start to see disproportionately one type of content, say sports content, and I, on the other hand, start to see disproportionately chess or mystery novel content, then it becomes very difficult for us as members of a society to have common bases of interaction with each other. Because, and that's where echo chamber or filter bubble, these terms have come into vogue.
Filter bubble.
That you're, in this example, you're in a sports bubble. I'm in a mystery novel bubble, right? So, and then if you further extrapolate that out to other important societal issues, politics, current affairs, etc., your version or perception of what is happening in society today, what are the topical issues, what needs to be done by the government going forward on various fronts, may be very different from mine.
Yes.
So, because you are being shown across various platforms, and now, as you know, we are all in a digital public square. So increasingly we're living our lives online, right? So you are spending more and more time online. The platforms are getting you to spend more time online. So your perception of what's salient and important is going to be very different from mine.
Yes.
So what people are saying is, whereas earlier, even though we may have disagreed, right, there was some common starting point. Now, even our perception of reality sometimes is so discordant that we refuse to even come on the same page to have a productive debate, disagreement, engagement, right? Because we say, look, you are not only wrong, you have no idea about what is going on. This is where the fake news, that
because
whole
I only
controversy
have
comes
one
into play.
perspective and one
Yes,
type of
one
content
perspective,
consumed.
exactly.
Okay, so for example, I'm a left winger.
Yes.
And I follow communist ideologies.
Yes.
My Twitter or my Instagram will only recommend me communist ideologies
Yes.
and communist manifesto narratives.
Yes.
So I won't see other perspectives as well.
Right.
And I only see justifications for mine. So that's okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. Got it. So coming to this, it's still not wrong because it is what we actually want, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we want to see that type of content because our interests lie in that.
Mm-hmm.
And if those particular companies are recommending us that, isn't that not wrong? Because that's what every other company does. They give what the consumers want.
Mm-hmm.
So isn't this justified in that particular scenario?
That's a good question. Couple of responses. One is, now this is going back to your point about data leaks, right? Again, another term that has become current or popular is dataopoly or dataopolies, right?
Exactly.
So you may have heard of monopoly,
Yeah.
or oligopoly.
Yeah.
So people have built from there to come up with coin this term called dataopoly.
Okay.
So companies or platforms or entities that collect huge amounts of our data, store, hoard, etc. Because these huge reservoirs of data are their source of income.
Yes.
Right. So now coming to your question, one problem with this business model, this approach to generating revenue and earning income, is that company ABC is collecting all sorts of personal information, data about you, and it is showing you a version of reality that corresponds to that. But let's say now several years have gone by and they've collected lots of personal information and data about you, and then there's the data leak that you talked about. Okay, maybe it wasn't their fault, maybe there was a hacker, whatever it may be. The point being that when there is, and the way maybe for people to think about it is, think of it like money in a bank, right? If there are only a few banks, right? Again, dataopoly, monopoly, oligopoly, just a few entities. If there are only a few banks each with a lot of money,
yes,
what is the impact of a robbery going to be versus if there are many banks with just a little bit of money each?
The impact is divided.
In the second case.
Yes.
But in the reality we are in now, the impact is concentrated.
So if there's one, so like just a recent example, Iran striking the Amazon data centers or the Google data centers in Kuwait or whatever that country was.
Yeah.
Now I got it. Okay.
So that's one that's another harmful negative impact, right? The other thing, Rudra, is that, again, this is a question that people have been raising over the past number of years. And India has also been grappling with, in the course of the enactment of the data protection law that we have now, is that, how much choice do you and I actually have? How much control do you and I actually have when we hand over our data to companies and platforms, right? Because what's the alternative of not handing over our data is that we lose access, we don't get access to these platforms. And these have become a part of modern life and living, and it's very difficult to engage in the modern world without being on a lot of these apps. Like I was saying earlier, whether it's education, whether it's employment, entertainment, whatever it may be, news, now people are looking increasingly to these online apps and platforms. People are going online. So it's like a ticket or a license to being a productive member of society. I mean, if you tell someone tomorrow that, I'm not on WhatsApp, for example, because I disagree with their data collection and processing practices, how far can you actually take that, And maybe some people can, but for most people, I'm saying for most people, there'll always be some people on the edges who have that commitment to face any consequence. But for most people, losing access to such an integral channel of communication, of mass discourse, is something that cost is too high, right? Because what if in their workplace, the manager says, I can't communicate with you if you don't have WhatsApp, or even their friends.
And social life is controlled by these mega platforms.
Yeah. So so coming back to your earlier question, that then when the leaks happen, right? Because so much of our personal information is being collected to show us a certain version of reality and keep us engaged and hooked onto platforms. When we look at that chain reaction from start to finish, the question in terms of harm becomes, how do we actually have a choice in terms of preventing those leaks? Say you talked about, you saw this data leak report. What about in the next year, in the next 5 years, Rudra? Can you actually positively play a role in preventing or reducing or minimizing future leaks of your data, of your personal information?
Yeah.
Unlikely.
Future leaks.
Right? Because what's the way to prevent it? Again, think of it as like money in the bank, right? If you say, okay, I will not give my data anymore. I will not give my money to the bank, right? If I don't give my money to the bank, if the robbers come and rob, my money will not be gone because I have not given my money to the bank.
Yes.
But that means that then you start slowly getting cut off, right, from society.
It's lesser convenient to have money under your bed.
Yeah. Because if you say, okay, I'm not going to use WhatsApp, I'm not going to use LinkedIn, I'm not going to use Twitter or any number of platforms. Look at your phone and the apps that are there, right? Delivery apps, food apps, all of that stuff, movie watching, etc. How likely is it? Right? Okay, that's what I'm saying. You talked about data leaks in the past. I'm saying data leaks in the future. How much agency and control do you have, Rudra, to prevent those data leaks from happening in the future? To prevent the dataopolies from amassing huge troves of information about you? It's tough. It's an uphill climb. Because every pipeline of data that you cut off to a dataopoly, there's going to be a boomerang effect on you.
It's going to affect us. The services that they provide to us will be limited.
Yeah, because a condition of their service is that you provide us with personal information, personal data, and we'll provide you access. But if you say, I don't want to provide personal data because I don't want the data leaks to happen in the future, then you will not get access. And then where will you be left?
The society.
Yeah.
But sir, let's say it's inevitable for us to actually give them data. We have to at the end, because obviously we are very self-centered. We need the services. We don't care how the data is being used, essentially. And that's what awareness is right now. Now, what if these troves of data, or these dataopolies, as you say, if they want to wreak havoc, because for example, there's a world war and all these major dataopolies are USA based, what is the maximum damage that they can cause?
So I would say, again, and this is my perspective, a limited take on it. The damage is in terms of, I look at it less as a geopolitical issue. I think there are others who can speak more knowledgeably to that. But again, I look at it more as a consumer rights issue, right? Which is if a platform or a set of platforms or companies have this kind of disproportionate information and data about you, then can you really, and there's a term, another term I'm going to introduce here, which has become popular lately. It's called N-shitification. I don't know if you've heard of it. N-shitification.
Spelling?
E-N and then shit, S-H-I-T, T-I-fication, F-I-C-A-T-I-O-N.
N-shitification.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, sir. What does this mean?
So this is my answer to your question. Is that what is the worst they can do? They can N-shitify their services and still get you to come back and keep using them. So this is a term that I'm actually borrowing from the author and activist Cory Doctorow, who has recently written a bestseller book by the same title, N-shitification. And what he says is that because platforms, whether you want to call them monopolies, dataopolies, because there's this power imbalance between platforms and us, and because we are dependent on them, and because we don't have a real choice to use platform B, C, or D, it's just one or two for each particular market that dominate that market. Because we don't have real choice, what platforms can do to us, what harm they can cause to us is that now they can provide a worse service to us with the assurance that we will keep coming back for more. That for me is the worst that they can do, how I look at it from a consumer perspective.
And at the end, we'll have to give them more data.
We'll have to give them more data, and even if they are irresponsible or negligent, and even if, again, going back to your data leak example, even if in the next 5 years, the data leaks for you get worse. I think you saw 14 or 15 reports. What if there are 30, 50 reports? You will still keep going back because there's no option or there's no alternative. That's for me. So the N-shitification of their services, right? So whereas earlier, maybe it would have been a fairly decent or good product or service, over time, because of all the data they have about us, they can gradually worsen the service, spend less and less on the service, and know that we'll keep coming back for more. And one example of this actually is with Google, which Doctor talks about. And what he talks about, what he says is that when Google came up and when it became popular initially all over the world and it got a lot of following, the search results it was providing was of a high quality, high caliber. And then what they realized over the course of various internal research projects that they did is that actually they didn't use this word, Doctor was using this word, but if we initiatify our search service, we'll actually get people to spend more time searching.
Okay.
And so we'll get more engagement and more revenue as a result.
Isn't that what ChatGPT is doing? Give hallucinated answers.
Perhaps,
maybe incentivizing their services.
yeah.
Maybe they give janbooch ki shitty answers though, so
Yeah.
that we give another prompt and spend more time on the chat.
Perhaps.
Maybe,
yeah.
maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, adding on to this, sir, I mean, there was this Schrems case, you might know, obviously.
Yeah.
So, just a story for everybody here. Max Schrems was a person who actually asked Facebook, right?
Yes.
That what kind of data they actually collect. And now
Yes.
Facebook, in the first place, initially they denied, yeah, we won't give you any answer. We are not a government entity. Freedom of Information Act won't work on us.
Yeah.
After that, when there were certain elevations to like referrals to certain courts,
Yeah.
Facebook gave them a CD which had 14,000 pages of
yeah.
just his data.
Yeah.
And that includes the deleted data.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
So somebody's seeing what I searched, even though I deleted it.
Yeah. And see here, what I would say also is, Rudra, now, again, in terms of thinking about the harms, right? The more we know that we are being watched or surveilled online, the less likely we are to be our true selves. The more, whenever we're being watched, we tend to become more conformist in our approach, right? And one of the things that, over the last, hundreds of years that scholars have observed when we've looked back on our own history as humans and try to figure out, how did we make change? How did we reform? How did we overcome oppression in the past? How did we overcome certain traditional approaches to doing things, and how do we change? How do we evolve over time? And the consensus that is there is that it always requires initially someone to break from the pack, someone to separate from the tribe and say, and point a finger and say, this is wrong. And initially when you do that, you're ostracized.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Gandhi was ostracized. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was ostracized. Nelson Mandela, all reformers, right? All people who try and shake things up. Now, you can only get to that point where you feel comfortable, right? Talking about societal evils, ills, other things which are a bit outside of the mainstream. If you have that privacy, that zone of autonomy, of agency, to explore things on your own without being watched or without having this kind of external surveillance happening, so that you can make mistakes.
Yes.
You can engage in trial and error. You can see for yourself what you're comfortable with, and then formulate a position, and then come back and go forward and maybe become public with it. But if we know that everything that we do, like you're saying about searches and keystrokes and things like that is somewhere going to be put in a database or a data vault, and then perhaps subject to leak at some point in the future, then your whole, from morning to night, the way you are as a person is going to, over time, change dramatically. So that also is, I think, something that is at stake in this whole debate and conversation. Just thought I'd...
So add to this, like the same debate, the same conversation. I mean, I think we have we all have experienced this thing that when we even talk about a certain thing, let's say I'm talking about certain type of Neimans ki kisi ke sandals मैंने बात भी कर ली, the same may be recommended either on my Instagram or my Google, बात भी कर ली. So I तो personally feel that ये मुझे सुन रहे हैं actively, constantly मुझे लगता है कि मुझे सुन रहे हैं. And adding to this, there's a joke, I think it was a very big joke in like 6 years ago that my wife asked me why I'm speaking so softly. I said I don't want Mark Zuckerberg to listen to me. And she laughed, I laughed, Alexa laughed, Siri laughed. So I mean, is it because of how accurate they are in predicting me or any person?
Yeah.
Like, why do we think that they're listening? Or are they, first question, are they listening to us? Second question, if we think that they're listening to us, why are they so accurate in predicting our behaviors?
So, okay, again, a couple of responses to your question. It's interesting you mentioned husband and wife, because there was an app, I'm forgetting the name. So recently, again, coming back to your point about data leaks, there was a data leak, I think in the US or somewhere. There's this extramarital app, like app for people who want to have extramarital affairs, who are married.
Okay.
And it became a huge controversy because the data got leaked, and so all the information about who is on the app and whose husband and whose wife is seeking an extramarital affair, that all became public. So in terms of this husband-wife example, the first thing to kind of note is the husband may be doing things that the wife doesn't know. The wife may be doing things that the husband doesn't know, but the apps know. So that's the first thing to note about the very interesting example that you gave, right? These apps, these platforms, because of how much data they are collecting from us, they perhaps know us better than ourselves.
100%, yeah.
You know,
100%, yes.
I can't remember the name of the expert. I think Bruce Schneier. I think he was saying once, he was giving this example, and I'll come back to your point, but just to illustrate that, just take email. One simple example, right?
Yes.
Whichever your email server or service is, how much information just from your email account, forget everything else, let's make it very simple and clear, how much information about us is in our email account. Now, and think especially for people who've been using the same account for 5, 10, 15 years. One is, of course, they may be sending emails and receiving emails, but what about the calendars, their daily plans, activities, flights, restaurants, reservations?
Even if I log in anywhere, like Facebook as well, that's mail.
Yeah. So all of that information accumulated over years, most of which people themselves have forgotten. 5 years back, what restaurant reservation did I make? Or what email notification did I get from the library, or whatever it may be. But the platform and its algorithms, they remember. So now coming to your question of, are they listening to us? My response is, I don't know. But I don't even know if they need to be explicitly listening to us to be able to make the kind of predictions and inferences that they do. So when you say, I was talking to my friend about shoes, and then a day later I got a shoe ad, what I'm trying to say here, Rudra, is that there may be so many other points in that 24-hour period between when you spoke to your friend about shoes and you got the shoe recommendation, the shoe ad. There may be so many other points where data about you was collected, which led to the shoe ad coming, right? Again, what I would suggest is, as an experiment, just think about, if you look at your phone right now, or people who are watching this, just see on your phone how many apps are there, right? For each app, you have, because you're able to use that app, you've given consent for collection of your personal data. And how many of us actually read the fine print to see, okay, what all have I actually consented to? And then, this is where I'll introduce another term here, again, very popularly used, big data, right? What we don't realize is, okay, you may agree to give your name, number, address, email ID. But what all about you can be further extracted with just these simple data points? We don't know, right? The complex algorithms, computations, mathematical calculations, the parameters, right? We simply don't know. There are some apps which I think, again, we just say yes, we kind of mindlessly agree, right? Because we want access to the app, to the service, which maybe say they want permission. You may have seen, or the listeners may have seen, permission for microphone settings or something to that effect, right? Permission to turn on. Maybe that sometimes can translate into, if I use your language, cut, copy, paste your language, the apps and the platforms listening to us. But again, bottom line is, it's actually because, if it is happening, it's because we've given them permission to do it without realizing it. There is one case called, if I'm getting it right, the name Lopez v. Apple.
Okay.
Someone actually brought a case in the US against Apple, saying that Siri is recording our private personal conversations.
Okay.
And, it is accidentally in settings are being turned on. So like you're saying about Siri laughing, right? So there was a case. And there was an outcome to that case. It was settled.
One second.
Yeah.
So Apple gave money to the person, Lopez.
There were several plaintiffs. Lopez was one of them, yes.
So
I think it was what is called a class action lawsuit.
So that the truth isn't revealed, they settled out of court. Maybe.
Yeah, so we have to be careful here. And I hope you will include the disclaimer language at the beginning of the clip.
It's all opinionated.
So, yeah. But they settled for $95 million. And technically, when you settle, you don't admit any wrongdoing.
Yeah. 100%.
So, but yeah, that's just
But we can assume wrongdoing.
I won't, but maybe if you want to. But so that did happen.
I'm a conspiracy theorist, so I have that right. At least, yeah, please.
Fair enough.
$95 million to how many people? 50? Like a class action?
No, I think I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but basically anyone who is an Apple phone user can perhaps claim
this
some
95
amount.
million. Okay.
A small portion of it, maybe $20, $30, whatever it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I got it. Okay, sir. One question remained unanswered. I mean, so for example, I gave my data to Aadhaar or the government essentially.
Yeah.
And they're hiring certain private agencies to store that.
Yeah.
I know for sure that no government, if US doesn't have it, then also we don't have it. So we don't have the required infrastructure to store the data properly.
Yeah.
Now we are outsourcing it with private companies.
Yeah.
I don't think so it's safe anymore. I mean, if it's that sensitive personal data that we're talking about, parents' name, father's name, my address, that becomes, I think personally, that becomes sensitive.
Yeah.
And if I'm giving it to the government, then it should at least give me certain guardrails that, this won't happen.
Yeah.
But while we are outsourcing the data storage, not even India, it's the CIA that actually outsources their storage as well.
Yeah.
So what's the solution to this? I mean, are we still required to give our data to the government for it to be leaked? I mean...
So, see, what I would say is what we need, whether we look at the government or the private sector, what we need is fundamental reform in how we collect, store, process data, and then how we protect that data. So that's where data protection laws come in. Here there are two choices, and I'll just lay them both out for you, and then people can decide whichever one is better. One is that, when we hand over our data to the government or to a private entity, we should be given more control and a genuine choice about how much of the data we want to hand over.
Yes, sir.
Now, with the government, that becomes a little bit difficult sometimes. But then, so that's option number one. Option number two is that when the government hands over this data to these private companies, the data protection law that's in place should be strong enough to deter these companies from being negligent with our data, resulting in its leakage or loss, etc. Right now, if we see the provision that's there in the what's called the DPDP Act, if you also look at the Information Technology Act and some of the data protection provisions therein, which are still as of now in force, the DPDP Act relevant provisions will come into force, I think, sometime next year. Whether we look at the IT Act or the DPDP Act, there is an argument to be made that there isn't enough deterrence in place for these private entities to actually take seriously the obligation to protect our data.
So these laws aren't serious enough, is what you're saying?
These particular provisions regarding what's known as reasonable security practices, right?
Yeah.
And then
it's vague.
It's potentially vague and difficult then for victims to claim some kind of remedy for.
So essentially what we are trying to say is that there are certain reasonable security measures that these companies have to take,
yes,
which are essentially vague and are described in that law.
I'll let you finish and then I'll
Yes,
come in. Yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Okay, I go. So they are vague and
Yeah.
it's very difficult for us as consumers to take any recourse because these reasonable security practices are defined as vague. Like they're just reasonable security. What is reasonable?
Yeah.
Yeah, that.
So, yes, partly. Now, the DPDP Act does bring in some more specificity to what constitutes a reasonable security practice in the rules, the DPDP rules. They talk about encryption and they talk about some other security measures that should be taken. But here's the thing, Rudra. When there is a breach or a leak, and like you're saying, right, with Aadhaar data, which is outsourced to private companies, and the feeling is that, hey, the private companies actually have not adhered to this. That's where I'm coming from. That they've not adhered to these security practices. Then what can you and I do? You know. So just to give you one example, under the DPDP Act, there is a provision for grievance redressal, right? But even if you are successful in your grievance redressal claim, you cannot get any compensation. There may be a penalty imposed on the private entity, which is then given to the government. But the victim himself or herself will not get any compensation. So then that means, yeah, go ahead.
This is in context of data leaks, right?
Data leaks, data breaches, violations of the DPDP Act.
Got it.
Violation of reasonable security practices, right? We are saying, okay, there's a requirement for reasonable security practice. Let's say a company has not implemented, but how many people will actually go after that company if they know that at the end of the day, they themselves will not get any compensation? Because it's expensive, it's time consuming.
Yes, but let's say it's not data leak now. Let's talk about deepfakes essentially.
Yeah.
And because we are already in the Act loop and the IT rules loop. So for example, if a person's deepfake. No, I'll start from a very rudimentary example. Not a deepfake, it's a little more complex. I'll start from somebody's MMS getting leaked online.
Yeah.
And now there was this case in 2005, the DPS MMS scandal.
Yes.
So the girl's father got an injunction order, I think,
Yes.
with the person who was selling that video.
Yeah.
But now the problem here is, although the law is in place, we have taken the right court remedy, and we have also involved the police in this.
Yeah.
The video is still online.
Mm.
How can we say that these laws are actually effective, or the rule of law is effective in actually curtailing this harm? Because the girl is still alive, and there's a question of character still looming till now, even after 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your take on this? Can laws have teeth in these contexts, or is it just we can't do anything about them because the internet is like that?
No, it's a very good point. So, see, there is something that can be done, in my view. Let me just first talk about, just building on what we were discussing right now, as to where the problem lies. There's you, Rudra, there's a platform, and then there is a person on the other end who is distributing the deepfake or the MMS video, whatever it may be. You can go after that perpetrator. In this case, you mentioned the girl's father, right? You can go after that perpetrator. You can file an FIR, you can pursue civil remedies in court, and so on and so forth. But as you said, that's time consuming, that's expensive, and then by the time you actually get some relief, the video or the MMS or the deepfake, it's everywhere.
You
right?
can't control everybody's galleries.
Right. So we are seeing where the problem lies. Just to be on this point for a little bit longer, because I think it's significant. When we are talking about data protection, or when we are talking about content regulation, the IT rules and the IT Act, what we are talking about is this framework. There's a victim, there's a platform, and then there's a perpetrator, right? The perpetrator is someone who is the hacker, maybe, who's doing your data leaks. The perpetrator is someone who's doing the MMS clip circulation or the deepfake circulation. So there's these three entities. And what we are trying to figure out is, which I feel is a lost cause, is how to get the victim some relief from the perpetrator, right? The other person, the person on the other side of the platform. Where I feel the solution lies, if you look at these three players, is to not focus so much on the victim, not focus so much on the perpetrator. I mean, we have laws in place, let them be there, so if people want to go after, they can. But where the focus should be is on the platform.
Okay.
So in the data protection context, there should be laws, regulations, which apply to the platform directly in terms of its obligations regarding how it handles, processes the data that is in its possession, right? And if it's negligent or if it's committed some wrong, then there should be a trigger for some kind of regulatory action on the platform without users having to get involved to set things in motion. Coming to the deepfakes of the MMS, similarly, I feel the way forward is for there to be regulations on the platforms themselves, regulatory oversight on the platforms themselves. The DSA, this law in the EU,
Digital Services
the
Act.
Digital Services Act, incorporates this philosophy to some extent. I think it's useful for us to possibly take a leaf out of it as well, right? So the idea here is, let's say with MMS clips or deepfakes, focus less on individual clips which are circulating, and then whether you get an injunction or you get a takedown order, what's the way forward? Focus more on the architecture, the layout of the platform itself, which may be allowing for encouraging, promoting such content, and focus on making changes to the platform design to discourage in the future such content from being spread. So the idea is, maybe today on certain ABC platform, right, because they have weak content moderation policies, because they have various other safety measures which they should have in place, they've not put in, there may be 100 such videos circulating. If we can introduce a law or a regulation which says that, okay, you have to, as a platform, you have to submit a report to an auditor talking about what safety measures you are putting in place. There's this idea, this concept, philosophy called safety by design, right?
So it's designed to be safe.
Designed to be safe. So that tomorrow when these MMS clips or deepfakes come up, the platform's architecture is such that it has measures in place to nip the problem in the bud.
Okay.
And then these videos don't circulate and spread across. It's interesting you mentioned this TPS MMS case, and this was, I think, on the platform Bazi.com.
Yes, you're right.
And I think what happened is, this person put up this clip for sale, and it took about 38 odd hours. Someone sent a notice, or some other person told the platform, their trust and safety team, they told the trust and safety team that this content is there, you should take it down. And so they took it down. They actually took it down within 38 hours. But by then, I think 6-7 sale transactions had already taken place. And that's how then the content spread further to what you're talking about. The idea behind this, what's called a risk management approach in the DSA, is have over time, platforms should develop in such a way that 2-3 years from now, when someone comes and puts such a clip for sale, before even the transactions can take place, which is the source for future proliferation, it is nipped in the bud and taken down. What we have now as a system, and what we had even, this was over 20 years back, the Bazi case. They had the same system in place, which is called notice and take down, right? Someone sent a notice and then the content was taken down. We still have notice and take down now. In fact, the recent IT rules amendments, which are being discussed a lot, and there have been several amendments in the recent past, but they all revolve around this idea of notice and take down.
That's it.
And how to change, amend, fashion, adjust the rules and the scope of notice and take down. I'm saying we need to go beyond this notice and take down paradigm, because no matter what you do, no matter how fast you try and get a platform to respond to a takedown notice, there's going to be content which spreads and proliferates unless platforms implement by themselves safety by design policies.
But how would an ideal takedown notice work? Like in this case, you say that we will make it faster, we would do certain amends that will make it better or efficient.
Yeah.
What would an ideal takedown notice look like? Like an
No,
example.
I'm saying that we have to move beyond a notice and takedown framework.
How would that work?
So that's what I'm saying is that the platforms should, over time, based on their transparency reports, based on their auditor reports, based on an infrastructure of regulatory oversight, each platform should organically develop in a way that it's able to detect such content, such harmful content, illegal content, whatever it may be, organically on its own or in a faster way, rather than relying on external. The point I'm trying to make is, right now we rely on someone externally to tap the platform on the shoulder and say, whether it's a government or court or a user, and say, hey, you have this content which is problematic, take it down. Rather than that approach, I know I'm not giving any specifics because I feel this is something by design that is meant to evolve over time. But the idea is to put pressure on the platforms themselves so that, let's say, for example, right, there's a deepfake about you. But let's say 3 years from now. But in these 3 years, assuming that we've incorporated some kind of a DSA type framework and we have a risk assessment, risk management system in place, in these 3 years, platform ABC, this hypothetical platform, has put in place certain safeguards, maybe certain verification tools on its own, because it's been engaging in this dialogue with its auditor, and the government is doing the oversight from above and telling the platform, if you don't engage in this process, there will be fines, penalties, etc. Because it's been investing this time, energy, and resource into figuring out how to tackle deepfakes, maybe it has come up with a tool that will detect the deepfake video about you when it's being uploaded. And so shortly after being uploaded, it is on its own automatically or however, whatever technical tools the platform has at its disposal, it is organically, that's why I use this term, taken down.
I mean, there are technical tools.
That's the ideal, I'm saying.
There are technical tools right now itself that say that I mean, it's very difficult for a human eye to detect ki is it AI generated. There's certain videos that
Yeah.
I've seen, they're so natural that you can't say ki haan ye AI hai ki nahi hai.
Yeah.
But there's this tool either on Twitter or some other apps that gives a disclaimer that this particular material was AI generated.
Yeah.
Similar to these tools, right? That
Yeah.
this is a deepfake and they'll recognize it's a deepfake and they delete it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or for example, you could have tools like that. Or for example, another rule, since we're talking about deepfakes, another rule that we can incorporate from the DSA is we can impose a responsibility on the uploader of that AI generated content to label that content as AI generated. And then we can have a fine or a penalty imposed on that person. So again, there's a deterrent on that person that if you, as the individual who's uploading such content, if you don't correctly identify it as AI generated, there will be consequences for you. My basic underlying point, Rudra, is that if we don't think of some such alternative, I'm not saying necessarily that what I've thought of or what I'm suggesting is the right way, but we need some alternative to the current notice and takedown framework. And I'll give you one more example of why. So in the last few years, the controversy around the IT rules and the various amendments, one of the main controversies is that the government is seeking to reduce the timelines for platforms in terms of when they, how much time they have to respond to takedown notices. Earlier it was 36 hours. I think now it's come down to 3 hours. So I just want to point out to you that what is the problem with that? Because actually, in a way, you may say that, hey, isn't that a good thing? Because we've been talking in this conversation about the harms that individuals are facing online from deepfakes, from MMS clips, and so on and so forth. So isn't it good if there is a takedown timeline that is shortened? Because then won't harmful and bad content be taken down faster?
But even minutes is enough. Minutes are enough to share content.
That's one answer, absolutely. Minutes are, even that is enough.
Yeah.
But then there's another collateral harm which is there, which is that content which is not actually illegal, harmful, fill in the blank, will be taken down as well, right? Because when you have such shortened takedown timelines, platforms don't have the wherewithal to apply their mind to see, okay, this takedown request has come. Is this content in question actually illegal? Is it actually violating a certain law, or can we push back? Can we ask questions about it, right? When you have 36 hours, you have the time to apply your mind and make a judgment about whether you feel this is a valid takedown request or not. When you have just 3 hours, and now potentially it's going to be shortened to even less than 3 hours, you don't have that bargaining room. So you will just mechanically, whenever takedown notice comes, you will act on it. Takedown notice comes, you will act on it. Now, here, for example, I'll just give you one illustration of why this could be problematic. Let's take, Rudra, one of your YouTube videos, right? What if there is someone who, is talked about in your videos, who's disgruntled about how he or she has been discussed, and they, maybe one of your previous guests, they were rightly critical of someone and shedding some light on some important public policy issue, but the people that they were talking about are upset by it, right? And they want your video to be taken down. When a platform had more time to respond to take down such takedown notices, they could have actually pushed back and said, hey, no, this is a valid, legitimate video. We've looked at it. We've understood it. It doesn't actually violate any law. So we're not going to respond to your takedown notice. But now what's going to happen with these abbreviated, shortened timelines is a lot of valid, legitimate content, like, for example, some of your other YouTube videos, platforms may be too afraid to push back because they know that the consequence of not
taking down
the content, of not responding to the takedown notice, is that there will be consequences for them. There will be hardships for them. And that has to do with something called a safe harbor law. But basically, if it's either their skin or yours, they will give you up.
Yes.
Right? So that's again another, just to give a concrete example, if you as someone who is a creator who has content that's up online, that's a concrete example of how when you rely on notice and takedown too much, and when you have these shortened timelines of some of the collateral consequences and damage that can occur, which we are not taking into account because we are only looking myopically at, there's deepfakes, there's harmful content, we need to remove it. But we need to think of, to my mind, a more targeted, nuanced, surgical approach to removal rather than just, kind of knee-jerk, hammer and nail approach, which is notice and take down. Yeah.
Okay. So coming to deepfakes, I mean, it's unregulated use of AI essentially, because without AI, deepfakes aren't possible.
Yeah.
So coming to this, I'll take a very recent example. So now I think we have crossed the stage where we have developed good API, good models of AI.
Yeah.
OpenAI, Claude, there are many others as well. Perplexity, DeepSeek, they've all made good models with lots of parameters. They are good chatbots as well.
Yeah.
Now the problem is scalability. These models are being scaled, and there are thousands of more APIs that are being used for harmful things. Now we are at a stage where there is scalability. The scalability is a problem, that these AI models are not tested or verified before they are scaled.
Yeah.
For example, I'll just give a very big example. Grok just was limited because till the last month we could create 18+ content on that. So if I wanted to morph someone else's picture into something explicit, that was possible with Grok.
Yeah.
But it was just last month that they actually did some tweaks with the code.
Yeah.
And it's not possible anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine that there are errors in scaling by this big company. It's billions of dollars.
Yeah.
There are certain indie developers as well who are single people making AirPods.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think so there are any laws that actually govern it in India. Anybody can deploy any type of AI without these rules. Maybe make their own model as well without these particular reinforcement learning tools that you don't have to make these types of pictures that contain this. What is your take on this, and what would you suggest in context of India?
Yeah. So it is a problematic issue. I think firstly, there are some laws that apply or that can be made to apply in these situations, which maybe we don't know too much about. So one is, of course, data protection laws like we've been talking about, but also consumer protection laws. This is something which I feel can be quite relevant in this context, but something that hasn't been focused too much. We do have a consumer protection law in India, and it does protect us from certain kinds of unfair trade practices, deceptive practices, misleading practices. And again, Rudra, like I was saying, something we don't realize, and this applies even in this AI context. Anyone who's using any of these platforms, many of us, we've entered into agreements, we've entered into contracts with these companies when we sign up to use their services, right? And then the question becomes, actually, they have certain responsibilities, even under Indian law, to deploy these services in a way that doesn't violate, say, for example, our consumer protection law. Okay, so if a platform, if an AI platform says that it's going to operate in a certain way, but then it doesn't, that actually can potentially amount to a misrepresentation on their part or a deceptive practice on their part, which we as consumers in India do have some legal recourse against. That's one. There's also, I would say, laws in place regarding manufacturing of products, and we think of these as AI app products, and when it comes to negligent design of these products, if they are manufactured in a way that is reckless in terms of considerations of harm, maybe the Grok example applies there, perhaps, I don't know, but potentially these other laws can also be deployed to meet the need. But yes, there is certainly, I mean, technology very often is far ahead of the law. And
Yeah,
the
we
law
don't
plays
have that
catch up.
AI Act, right? Because you need
Yeah.
to regulate AI according to the application.
Yeah. So now I think, for example, in response to the Grok controversy, that's partly a reason for why the IT rules have also been amended. So the government is trying, I think, to play catch up.
How are they amended, sir? Like, what's the new thing? What are the new things?
I think, like we were talking about, one is in terms of these takedowns. They want to have platforms like Twitter, in this example, respond to takedowns faster. So if Grok is putting something out there that is obscene or harmful in some other way, 18 plus content, like you're saying, which is going out onto the larger platform, the government wants to be able to send these takedown notices faster. But again, the problem here, I feel, is the intent is correct, but the way they're going about it perhaps can be improved upon. Because what you need to do is you need to put the direct obligation and responsibility on the platform itself at the design stage. That's why, again, safety by design.
Yes.
That when they design these products, like you're saying, how
Grok is designed.
That there should be an obligation with consequence for non-compliance. That if you forget how it is used and deployed, right? Because so many people have been harmed by the deployment. But I'm saying in the future, even without waiting for those harms to happen and for those harms to befall us, at the design stage itself, if there are obligations which are placed, then there'll be fewer such products released into the market in the future. So that I feel also is where something can be done.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and one more thing, like, I don't know how far can AI go with these scams. I mean, it's the bad side of AI. AI makes things more convenient for us, makes my life easier for sure, has given me a companion as well in certain way or the other. It's a chatbot, right? ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Now, how far can AI go with these scams, essentially?
Tough to say. We are seeing over the past few years and even in the very recent past, that the stories are becoming scarier. I would say, again, one, in terms of legal recourse, if you've been scammed, etc., it's an uphill task, right? Because again, you can file an FIR, you can go to court to try and claim relief, so on and so forth. You can, if you're financially scammed, you can inform your bank to freeze your account, etc. But those are stopgap measures. Those are band-aid approaches. Again, what I feel ultimately has to be looked at is a product liability approach. That's what we've been talking about a lot so far, that these platforms have to be, and in terms of the services that they offer, they have to be, and in terms of what they come up with for our use and our interaction, they have to be looked at as products, right? And there have to be some safeguards, some rules, some liability measures in place for, if you design again, like I was saying earlier, if you design a product negligently, etc., until and unless you reach that stage, where, again, like I said, right, you take the victim out of the picture. You have the laws in place which are there for victims, which are there right now, but you need to supplement that with some kind of direct enforcement measures against the platforms themselves. Because again, the paradigm into which we are falling, which I think is problematic, is you've got a victim of an AI scam, you've got the AI tool or measure which was used to perpetrate the scam, and you've got the perpetrator on the other side. And we're saying victim and perpetrator, they have to, victim has to see what he or she can get from the perpetrator. I'm saying you have to look at the intermediary or the platform in between and how they are being designed, and what are some of the flaws and pitfalls there, and what are some of the laws and rules that can be directly applied to them, so that victims don't have to run from pillar to post, or so that in the future there will be fewer victims to begin with. And just to give one example, in a slightly different context, if you look at the FTC in the US, right, the Federal Trade Commission, and you look at, say, the Cambridge Analytica scandal, right, just to take one example.
Yes.
there it wasn't individual users or victims going to court seeking relief. They did that separately on their own, relying on other laws. But because the FTC has under its purview something called the FTC Act, and there are various provisions and sections in the Act dealing with certain bad, harmful practices of platforms, negligent, deceptive practices, which if platforms cross the line, the FTC can come down on them.
Okay.
Right? So that's what happened with Cambridge Analytica, for example. There was a $5 billion fine imposed on Facebook in
50,000
2019.
crore rupee fine.
Yeah. Imposed on Facebook in 2019 because it violated a consent decree that the FTC had imposed on Facebook years back, and because the underlying violation was of something called Section 5 sub A of the FTC Act. So that's an example
Consent decree.
Yeah. So again, there's a lot of legalese. The basic underlying point I'm trying to make is there was some alleged wrongdoing by a platform. Okay.
And
Individual users maybe responded by relying on various laws to try and get relief. I think here also there may have been some class action lawsuit, etc. Different people in different places, but it wasn't just left to these individual victims, purported victims, to look out for themselves. When there was this alleged wrongdoing, the government had, through the FTC, this government agency, stepped in on its own to try and take some kind of regulatory action against the platform. So what we call often in the Indian context is suo motu action.
Suo motu action.
On its own, by a regulatory agency. Right, the CCI, for example, the Competition Commission of India, has acted suo motu on various occasions.
Own, recognizing if there's any wrongdoing,
yes,
they'll do it on its own.
Yes.
Because they're a watchdog.
Yes. So there is actually an example of this in the context of the WhatsApp 2021 privacy policy update. Right, WhatsApp did a privacy policy update in 2021. There was reporting about it. People in India and across the world, several people were not happy about it. And so then you say, okay, maybe individuals can take their own action. There was in fact a 2016 WhatsApp privacy policy update, and there's someone by the name of Karmania Singh Serene, who back then launched a case of her own against the 2016 privacy policy update, which is now pending before the Supreme Court. So individuals can take action. But what I'm saying is what we need in the data protection context, in the content regulation, deepfake context, is something like what the CCI did in response to the WhatsApp privacy policy update of 2021. The CCI suo motu took cognizance and got involved to see whether this privacy policy update violates any of India's Competition Act provisions, and it found then that it does. And it imposed a fine of 213 crores or something like that on WhatsApp. And of course, that has been appealed and challenged, and I think it's now before the Supreme Court. That's an example of what I mean, of what needs to be done.
So we would need an organization like CCI, an entity like CCI, but in the context of data privacy, which will act like a watchdog like CCI is, and it will take suo motu action against wrongdoings.
Yes. And even in the context of content regulation. So like for deepfakes and all. Okay. Similarly, I feel we need.
There should be another, apart from the data privacy organization.
Yeah, data privacy can be for data protection, CCI is for competition, maybe for the deepfakes, for content.
There should be another.
So to ensure that, okay, platform ABC or whoever, they're actually adhering to safety by design norms and rules.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
So then you and I don't have to worry about, okay, what if there's a deep fake of me? What if 3 years from now there's a data leak? We've got someone watching our back.
Okay, now I got it. So like a support. This being my last question, I mean, this is something that I personally thought of, that India, so like there's this Maslow laws of needs triangle.
Yeah.
Needs have to be satisfied. Then we self-actualize. Then we move further in the pyramid. Then we go spiritual. Right?
Yeah.
So we need needs, then friends, then social things, then luxury, then self-actualization, where you actually realize that, we're an entity, or saying moksha prapti.
Yeah.
So India is at the stage.
I don't know how to attain moksha. That's a question.
No.
I'm still figuring that out.
No.
I'm not so old.
No. Nahi. Obviously. India, like as a country, is still at the need stage.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a divide that someone is at the top, and then there's certain people that struggle to meet the needs. Now the problem here is, how can data privacy, which is again a matter of people at the top of the pyramid, be relevant? Essentially, why I'm speaking this is from this example that India में खाने को अभी खाना नहीं है. People are poor.
Yeah.
We are at a very privileged position that we're talking here about these things.
Yeah.
How is data privacy relevant to them? Secondly, I'll give an example that अब एक बारी मैं किसी भेलपुरी खाता था. Someone's exam sheet, it was made into a plate.
Yeah.
With the names, with the roll numbers, with the parents' name, with the address. Now that's sensitive personal data of that particular person.
Yeah.
Now I would say, is this how India treats data privacy?
Yeah.
And is it relevant for India in general? And why is it?
So, it is relevant. And what I would say actually, Rudra, is I would push back a little to say that I feel to give the Indian public credit where it's due, that people actually over time have become a lot more aware and sensitive to data privacy concerns and to the importance and significance of personal data and data protection. And again, the example that I'll give, I'll go back to this WhatsApp privacy policy update of 2021. I mentioned that CCI took suo motu cognizance, but in the months around, so WhatsApp actually, a few months after it released its privacy policy update, of course, the litigation and all that may be continuing, but they decided to withdraw or at least put on hold this privacy policy update. This was before the fine, before anything, because there was a lot of, my point is, public outcry, right? So why was there public outcry? Because people realized that this is a significant issue that affects us, okay? So that's why I say I would actually push back to say that actually I feel here credit is due that people actually have become a lot more sensitized and aware. Maybe not nearly as much as they can be or should be, but we've come a long way. The other example I'll give is in terms of advertising. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of platforms and apps in terms of the advertising they do now is they try to sell themselves on the basis of saying that we have better privacy. We are much more privacy protective. Privacy is like a USP for us. So this again something represents a shift in my view. This wasn't the case so much before. Why? Again, it's because I feel companies are responding to what they see as the need of their audience, of their market. Which is that people want privacy protection. So there also I would say actually that, it's good. What we're seeing is good, and there has been certain advancement and progress in terms of people's awareness about these issues.
But is it still relevant for the poor people and the people who even struggle to meet their needs? Not so much because...
Yeah, well, so I would say that, when you are, obviously when you're hungry, for example, go back to Maslow's hierarchy, right? Even when you and I, right? Tomorrow, if you say, when you wake up, Rudra, if I tell you that I'm not going to give you food till 8 p.m., then probably at 3 p.m, if I try and come and talk to you about current affairs and state of the world, you will be very frustrated with me. You've not eaten. So why should we look at anyone else? Let's look at ourselves only, right? Yeah. So this is natural. But that's why I would say that, it's not that... so part of it is that, yes, when you're human and when, you're suffering in various ways from hunger, malnutrition, whatever it may be, then the mind space to devote to certain other issues becomes less. That's natural. That's there for all of us. But that doesn't mean I feel that then it's fair to turn around and say, oh, you're hungry and malnourished, And like I'll give again coming back to the example of you, if I come to you, I leave you hungry from the morning, I come to you at 3 p.m., I think it'll be unfair for me to scold you for not doing your studies or not being up to date with what's going on in the world. That's unfair, right?
Yeah.
Because first, let me feed you something, and then I'm sure that space will open up for you to consider these other issues.
Yes.
So that kind of dichotomy to me is a bit unfair in terms of imposing on people who are already suffering for so many other reasons.
That your data is in private. They're struggling to meet their daily needs.
Yeah. So that's one thing I'll say, and then I'll just come back and reinforce the other point I was making, which is that despite some of these concerns and constraints, we are seeing the traction that privacy is getting and data protection is getting as an issue in India. And I'll just end on this maybe. We've seen in the last 10 plus years various issues of social significance come before the courts, including the Supreme Court, which are very closely and intimately connected to the right to privacy, right? So when we talk about decriminalization of homosexuality, right, very closely connected to the right to privacy, right? You should have that zone of autonomy in your private affairs to, within reason and limit, to live as you want to live. When we talk about transgender rights, again, there is an overlap with the right to privacy, and so on and so forth. So many other issues, societal issues of significance, whether it's a woman's right to have an abortion, right to use contraceptives, right to dress the way we want to, so on and so forth. In varying ways and to varying levels, these issues have captured the public imagination. I think there was that Vicky Kaushal movie also, right, on homosexuality, the decriminalization of homosexuality. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where he played a gay person who was he was in a gay relationship, and then in the end they get married. I'm forgetting the name of the film, but my point is again, why is Bollywood tapping into this? Because they see there's a larger social resonance. And again, I'm connecting it to privacy because when it comes up for legal consideration, one of the main reasons why the Supreme Court ultimately decriminalized the Section 377 of the IPC is because they relied on the fundamental right to privacy for us to live our lives in a certain way, the way we like, and not to be told by society or the state how to live. So again, I'll just end on this and reinforce that despite the constraints and impediments that you have identified to people in India focusing on privacy rights and data protection rights, still we've been able to a significant extent.
100%.
So I would say that's an optimistic note to end on for the future.
I mean, right to lock your room doors is also right to privacy only.
Yeah.
And even people who can't meet their needs need that, right? We need 4 walls around us so we can poop.
Yes. Yeah. We do.
Good privacy, even people who struggle to meet their needs need to poop in private.
There you go.
That being said, thank you so much, sir.